This passage will be shorter, where we're going to talk about Cicero, and we're going to talk a little bit about Roman heroism in the context of Cicero. And it'll be shorter because I already told you the story of Regulus, right? In the previous clip when we talked about Horace. So, what do I want to say about Regulus? I want you to think about why Regulus would be such an important figure to the Romans, right? What is so extraordinary about him? And one thing that seems really extraordinary is how devoted he is to Rome, right? How much he loves Rome. That's something you saw in Gladiator as well. This idea, right, that the common good is exemplified in Rome, and that Rome is a kind of justice, right? A kind of instantiation of justice on earth. And service of Rome, service for Rome, right, is the service of justice. And I think you see this, it's much more pronounced in Roman culture, right? Contrast it to for example, to Socrates or to Plato, right? Where you need philosophy to kind of be this antidote to the culture, right? To Greece, to make Greece better, right? And you also have this skepticism of the opinions of the political community about what's good and what's just. Okay, that's not a Roman thing at all. And that's not a Cicero thing at all either. Cicero is extremely interesting, okay? He wouldn't say that he's particularly original. He says he's not original, right? He goes and he studies the Greek philosophers and he transmits them to a Roman audience. He's not a philosopher. He's a lawyer by training, okay? He's really well known for his oratory. He kind of rises to prominence because he foils a conspiracy against the Republic, and he makes his name on the idea, right, that the Roman citizen commits to Rome, right, as a way of committing to justice, and that you have a duty to the Commonwealth. This isn't to say that he wasn't critical of Rome, because he was very critical of the imperial tendencies of Rome. Okay, so he held the highest office that can be held in the Republic. He was in the consulate, and he was opposing the drift toward dictatorship that was actually based on popular support. So after the death of Julius Caesar, Mark Antony comes and kills Cicero, right? Because he's such a threat to imperial Rome, because he's a holdover of the Republic, right? He's still talking about the Republic. And actually, he had backed Octavius, who was one of the people who was in the running for rule after Caesar's death, and he is the one that prevails, right? He'd backed Octavius, but Mark Antony and Octavius make a deal that involves Cicero's death. So that's very sad. His two works, The Republic and the Laws, are particularly modeled on Plato's Republic and Plato's Laws. And then he has another work that's really prominent and that we worked on for class, which is On Duties, okay? On Duties is an extended treatise that's written almost like a letter to his son. Okay, he had a Roman son who was kind of dissipate, into drinking, into women, not into philosophy, not into politics. And so he writes him this treatise that's trying to say, look, it's beneficial to you to follow your duties. Okay. And this brings me to 2 points about Cicero that are important. The first is that he is a natural law thinker. And this is in your notes that I uploaded for you about Rome. He has this idea that there's natural justice that he's bringing out of Aristotle, that he's bringing out of Plato, right? And it's this natural justice that political communities should seek to instantiate. This is really important. This is different from Plato, okay? Natural justice is something the political community can obtain, right? And that Rome, when it's in its republican orders, is obtaining. That's really important about him, okay? And this is why he presents himself as a statesman who's interested in philosophy. Remember, for Plato, the virtuous man wants to be a private man. For Cicero, that's not true. Cicero says the virtuous man will be a public man who studies philosophy for the sake of the common good. Okay, this is different. And here's my next point about Cicero, and this is a really Roman point. Doing the right thing, right, the just, is also beneficial. It's also expedient, okay? The expedient and the just align. When you do something that seems like a loss to you, right, for the sake of justice, what Cicero says is that it's not actually a loss to you. So this is the example he gives. He gives the example of Regulus. Had Regulus not kept his word, and had he stayed in Rome, okay, instead of going to Carthage, Cicero says he would have been dishonored. And what does that mean? Okay, this is an important difference between Cicero and Plato. Honor, right, for Cicero, he says in the passage you read, it has its foundation in nature. And this means, right, that what is honorable is naturally just. So, getting honor from your political community, following the norms of honor in your political community, is a serious part of what it means to be just. And serving and receiving honor and giving honor in your political community is similarly an important part of what it means to be just. It's actually in nature, right? It's naturally just. So if Cicero had not gone back to Carthage, he would have dishonored himself, which would not have been to his benefit, right? Because he would have transgressed the norms of justice. So what emerges from this is this idea that what is honorable is in nature. It's natural, in a sense. And this is what enables Rome and Roman society to kind of be the ultimate framework of justice and duty for Cicero. Okay? And that's kind of the most important point to draw from him. This is why doing the right thing and getting a reward are so closely united for him. The expedient and the just go together. This means that self-interest and justice go together. Augustine's going to kind of blow through this. Plato says something a little bit like this, but not so much, because he doesn't depend on the society or the political community in the same way that Cicero does. Okay, students, these are my last remarks. We're going to focus on the mixed regime solution here. So it's definitely the case that Rome changed a lot of things. But it's also definitely the case that they're riffing on Greece. And it's also the case that we still have a lot of the Roman forms. Because if we're really influenced by European history and European political thought in America, then it's certainly the case that we're influenced by Rome, right? Because Rome conquered so much of Europe. A lot of our laws and institutions come from Roman insights. So let's talk a little bit about regime design, okay? Here I want to focus on Cicero, right? And I'll throw in a little bit of Polybius, who is a Roman historian. All of this is in the Roman notes that I uploaded for you. Okay, so Cicero says that the unity of one ruler has the benefit of affection and devotion to that one ruler, and also of effectiveness, right? Only one decider in a certain way. The wisdom of the most virtuous is found in the Senate, right? And the freedom of popular government and the representation of consent is found in the commons. All right? So, unity of one ruler, consulate, wisdom of the most virtuous, Senate, okay? Popular sovereignty and consent, commons. All right. So Polybius and Cicero both argue that Rome accomplished this kind of design. What Polybius says is Senate has the power to pay and supply the military, as well as the power to renew the consul's one-year term of office. Commons have the power to ratify or annul consul treaties, and consuls have to account for their actions to the people when they leave. The consul has authority over public affairs, and all lower magistrates are bound to obey them. Consuls have the power to execute Senate provisions. The commons confirm cases of capital crime and pass or reject laws changing Senate authority and changing the state of senators themselves. So what you see here, right, is that you have in Rome a very early separation of powers. This is an extremely significant political development, okay? And in many ways, you have Cicero to thank for that, but also Polybius.